What's up everyone? Welcome back to Average Bros Media. My name is Nick and today we're going to be working on the 350Z once again, and we are so close to having this thing track ready, so let's get into it. Alright, so today we're going to be doing one of the last few mods that we need to get done on the 350Z to get it out on the track, and that's going to be an oil cooler. So I looked at a number of different kits for this car and ended up going with the Z1 kit for a few different reasons. I heard nothing but good things about them. They use a Setrab actual cooler, which I've heard great things about that product as well. And they have a number of different options to kind of make the package, depending on what you're doing with your car, whether it's going to be a total street car or you use it on the track, you can get different size coolers, and they have a bunch of different options. So I'm going to go ahead and dive in, unbox this, and then I'll show you guys what options I went with. So like I was saying, one of the things that I liked about this kit was there was a number of options to really make it customized to whatever you're going to be using your car for. So for this particular kit, I kind of fully spec'd it out with all the different options on it. So starting with like the core size, you can get a couple different options. They've got a 19, 25, and 34 row core option. We went with the Big Daddy with the 34 since this car is going to see track time and want to make sure it had plenty of cooling capability. You can get protective hose wrap, so that's what you see here over this braided line. So just because that might be rubbing against the chassis or that kind of stuff, I didn't want it to rub through on the hose or anything like that, so went with that as well. And then we went with no damage, no harm. Like I was saying, I went with the thermostatic option on the oil drain adapter here. So what that does is it's gonna sense how hot the oil is and whether or not it's like at a certain temperature, it's gonna open or close this system. So when the car is just warming up, it's not gonna be cycling through here. When it gets hot and needs the cooling capability, it'll adjust for that. So on a car that's being driven on the street and the track, I thought that was a really good option to have. So I went with that as well. So that's kind of the different options that you can get on this kit. It obviously comes with a few other things. You've got a nice Setrab bracket that mounts to this guy and then matches on it, rib nuts, all the hardware that you need. So we're gonna go ahead and start diving into this. And when I was looking for videos online, there really wasn't any explanation videos. So I wanna make this like a full tutorial for anyone who's watching this and can learn how to do this themselves. It does come with a nice set of instructions, so we're gonna be following those as well because I've never done something like this, but we're gonna learn, so let's get to it. All right, so first order of business, we gotta take the bumper off on the car. If you've watched our videos before, you know how to do this. It's a pretty simple process. This is an aftermarket bumper, but just to give you guys a quick rundown, there's some poppets up here and then some in the wheel well. I'm not gonna show this process because it's pretty boring, but I'll see you guys once I get the bumper off. We've got the car lifted up, so we're gonna be able to change the oil really easily because we do have to drain that to put that new oil sandwich filter on there, as well as just have a little bit higher off the ground to work on it so we're not having to like crouch down super low to the ground to mount up the brackets and all that kind of stuff. Forgot to mention Lewis is here as well. Got Lewis over here.
What's up, boys?
Dude, I literally said that you were gonna wear this sweatshirt. The moment I put on the same shirt this morning, had to happen.
Had to do it.
All right, let's get to mounting up this oil cooler. So the first thing we need to do, let me flip the camera around and I will show you. So the first thing we need to do is get this bracket here mounted up to the oil cooler. So just mounts on like that. And then we'll have to take this plate off here. You can see there's a little plate that sandwiches between. Let's see if we can focus. So this little plate here sandwiches two pieces of rubber between there, so we'll go ahead and pull those off and get this mounted. So now that we've got that bottom bracket mounted on there, it's all tightened on, the next thing we're gonna do is take this would be the passenger side. So passenger side over here, what's mounting to the centerpiece in there, and we're gonna use the Z1 upper support bracket. So we're just gonna pull these guys off here. Okay, so the bolt's ready to go in. They're gonna mount up here. Bracket goes on like that. Flip that so it's out of the way. And then the washer, this guy, and then the bolt are gonna each go on. So once you've got that loosely situated, we're gonna go ahead and tighten down the bolts that hold this to the actual core, and we're gonna leave this bolt and this bolt here loose so those can be adjusted after we put it on the car. So what we're looking at now is how we can get this core mounted in here. Because this is the largest size core they offer, we're somewhat limited in mobility back and forth due to this bash bar here and then the hood latch stuff. So it does have to fit kind of around some of those things, and you're gonna wanna be able to get 3 of the bolts down here. So the tricky part on this is that the back side of this fiberglass core support here isn't entirely flat. There's kind of like ribbed pieces on the back that provide extra support. So if we drill into one of those, that's not going to work. So what I'm thinking here is we'll go through and mark which 3 holes we'd like, and what we're going to do from there is use one of these rib nuts, and those are going to go in through the backside, and that's what this is going to mount to. So pretty simple process. We just need to make sure everything is lined up. So what I'm going to do is go through with a Sharpie and mark kind of where we'd like to have it and make sure we have clearance all around. And then there's a bracket that goes up here as well. It's kind of hidden back there, but that's the one that we mounted up top. And then I'm thinking we'll get one good bolt back there. So that's the plan. I'm gonna go ahead and mark a few things and get back to you guys. All right, so we've got our 3 holes marked, 1, 2, 3. I don't know if you guys can see them, but I can, and that's all that matters. So now we're gonna drill these out for the rib nuts using a 5/16 drill bit. All right, so with the rib nuts in there, we're gonna go ahead and use the tool that they give us, which looks like this. You thread the bolt through it and then twist it in until it's resting on it. And then so we're gonna use a wrench here, hold the base of it, and then we're gonna turn this top part clockwise. So with this one done over here, we're gonna hop over and do these 2, and then we'll be able to mount that up and get the center point there and be almost done mounting it. So we've got all 3 rib nuts mounted down here. They're just loosely mounted, but the last piece that we need to do to get this thing firmly mounted here is mark over here where we want this bracket. So I think we've got it where we want. You'll notice we left a little bit of room between the horn bracket here, so, or not the horn bracket, I guess that's just the hood latch, between the hood latch, so that's not gonna rattle against it. This thing is nice and level with the radiator fins, which is what we want. So I'm gonna go ahead and mark right here. So that's where we want our hole for the last rib nut. And we're gonna go ahead and drill that out. So I got the hole drilled out here, and you'll notice I was being very careful not to put too much pressure, because should you go too far through that, your radiator's right behind it. And if you punch a hole in your radiator, you're gonna be a very sad boy. So I'm gonna go ahead and get this rib nut pulled through with the tool like we did down here, and then we'll start mounting that actual core back up there permanently. Now that we have the rib nuts all in there, it's time to firmly mount this core support up there for the last time. So in order to do so, because this isn't entirely perfectly flat, they've supplied these rubber washers that go in between the core support and the rib nut. So I've gone ahead and pre-threaded the bolts through each of the holes down here, and we're gonna now go ahead and mount it up here. Step is going to be getting the core fittings actually in the core here. So to do that, we're going to go ahead and pop out the plastic cover that's in there. I'll leave that one in until I get to it, just so nothing falls in there. But it recommends putting a little bit of lubricant around the threading here and on the O-ring. So I'm just going to take a little dab of the oil and just kind of rub that on there a little bit, and then we'll just spin that in by hand as much as possible. Perfect, so with those in there, I'm gonna go ahead and wipe the oil off my hands, and then we'll get those snugged down just so there's no leaks when we actually go to start it up. All right, boys, we've encountered a bit of a roadblock. So as you can see here, because this is the Big Daddy, there's very little clearance between this fitting here and the top part. So even if that thing was on there, we still have some clearance issues. And now there wasn't much room to like drop it further down. So like even if we pulled it out and put in new rib nuts, it's not gonna really solve the problem. So what I'm thinking is we'll need to get a Dremel here and do a little bit of clearancing. So I'm gonna try to clearance that out there so there's enough room for that fitting to go up there. And then we may need to do a little bit of trimming over here as well, just so that hose can run over. But my boy Russell's coming, he's bringing a Dremel, and we're gonna go ahead and clearance that out once he gets here, make room for it, and then we should just be able to wrap that hosing down and fingers crossed be on the home stretch. All right, so we're just gonna grind out where you see the drawing up here, clearance that a bit, make more room for the hose. All right, so we called it a night a little early last night. Had to go kick it with the boys for a while, do some RC drifting, but we're back at it today. So we finished doing clearancing for the hoses. I'll have Lewis come over here real quick and show you guys. So we clearanced out this right here to get a little bit more room for that neck of this adapter to come out, and there was enough room last night. And then we clearanced this a little bit just so the hose coming up off of here can tuck through there. So we're gonna go ahead and double check that those fit, and then fill this core up and start looking at connecting it over to the oil sandwich plate. All right, so I got the core mounted back up with the hoses on it, but I'm running into a little bit of an issue. Let me show you guys what I'm dealing with. Okay, so here is how I have it set up currently with the hoses running both to my right, which is, for you guys' reference, this is the driver's side part of the car. So it's gonna run down here and then around and under was my thought, and then it'll go up to the filter up in there. Now, the issue I'm running into is that as it sits currently with the long hose on this side and the short hose on this side, obviously this side has to go a little bit further distance, so therefore it's too short. Now, after looking at the instructions, I think that they want you to route the hoses going that way, to the left. The problem is, I think that these instructions are written, you know, for either their 19 or 25 row core, because that's gonna sit a lot lower down here, and there's not gonna be all this stuff in the way of routing the hoses through here. So if you look, that's gonna be pretty hard to route a hose through there, which is why my thought was to run it the other way. So what I'm thinking here is, before I disconnect these and switch the short hose to this side and the longer hose to this side, I wanna get the oil filter sandwich on down here in its orientation and make sure that even with that I have enough length to run them around this way. Because if I don't and have to route them that way, we have to kind of reassess what we're doing here. So I'm gonna go ahead and try to hook up that oil sandwich down here, which means draining all the old oil out of the car now. So I'm gonna go jump on that and we'll see where we end up. All right guys, we have run into a bit of a problem. So after a bunch of deliberation off camera and test fitting these lines in various ways, come to the conclusion they just need to be run to the left towards the passenger side of the car, just due to how long those lines are. That's how the kit is made. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna pull this off and then swap these hoses back to what it says they need to be in the instruction manual to be routed that way. So longer one on this side, shorter one on this side. The main issue here is that this is going to need quite a bit more clearancing. So as you can see there, we clearanced it to fit that way, but if it's gonna be flipped the other way in its orientation, we need to make clearance for the actual AN fitting that'll be going that way. So I'm gonna pull out the Dremel, get to work on this after I pull this core off, and then hopefully we'll be able to mount everything up and be done with this. Okay, it's been probably about an hour since I talked to you guys. I made a lot of progress. It's just not gonna look like it because it was all moving the hoses to be oriented differently and making a little bit more clearance, all minor stuff, but we are ready to move forward. Let me show you what we ended up with. All right, check it out. So this is the core's final placement. We got this AN fitting tucked up in here. So we had to do a lot of clearancing back here in the core support, but that does fit up there. It's not rubbing up against anything that's gonna cause that to wear down or cause any issues. So we clearanced that all out. I sanded down the edges with the Dremel to make it look nice. And then this one will be sitting just like that. So they're going towards the left-hand side of the vehicle. I would like this to be a little bit more like flat that way, just so if there were to be impact up here, but with the hood latch, there's not really much I can do about it. So unless I go with like a quick latch hood system, that's just the way it's gonna be. So these are gonna route this way, put like a nice zip tie around them there. And then the next step is to tuck them back there and start working on that oil sandwich plate. So the next thing we're gonna work on is getting this attached to the car. So this large O-ring, the rubber side, is gonna go onto the motor like that. And so the next thing we need to do is attach the hoses here just loosely so we can get them up in there, make sure we've got everything lined up, and then we'll start looking at getting this actually fitted. Before you put this on the car, you do wanna make sure that these two fittings here are tight. They don't come tight from the factory, so make sure you tighten those down, and I've already done that off camera. Okay, so now that we've test fitted this up onto the actual oil filter location, you can go ahead and tighten these fittings down, and then that'll be ready to go on. So once you've got that sandwich adapter plate on there, and you got that threaded adapter onto the post and tighten by hand, you're going to torque it to 25 foot-pounds and then attach the oil filter. So with the oil filter on, everything should be tightened down. I'm going to go ahead and refill the system. So we need 5 quarts of oil. Remember, we've already filled up the oil cooler core, so we don't need to add any more additional for that, just the 5 quarts that this engine calls for. So I'm going to go ahead and do that real quick. All right, you guys, we have everything bolted up, so fingers crossed there's no leaks. We're gonna go ahead and start up, do a quick inspection, look everything over, make sure nothing's leaking, and if there's no leaks, we'll be able to wrap it up, kind of tidy up the hoses and all that kind of stuff, and be on our way to finishing this project. So the last thing I need to do is tidy up the hoses like I was saying. This kit came with a bunch of nice zip ties, so we'll be able to kind of pull these together up here, clean up how that comes off of there, and then put a few more down here and make sure we're all nice and tidy and that these hoses aren't gonna rub up against or hit anything. And then once we've done that, we can take it for a spin around the block. Got the car on the ground. We're gonna take it for a quick test drive, just around the block, get it up to temp, make sure there are no leaks before we call this project done, and then I'll show you guys a quick little cinematic of how good everything looks, because I am super impressed with this Z1 kit. All right, you guys, I am back from the test drive. I got the car up to temp and we are seeing no leaks anywhere on the system, which is awesome. That means this project is wrapped up. But before I close out this video, let me show you how good the Z1 kit looks on the car, because they put together an absolutely stellar product and I want to show it off a little bit. And that is a wrap on this week's video. Thank you once again for joining us. If you're watching this video to install one of these kits on your car, best of luck. I hope it goes smoothly. We just have a power steering cooler left on this car, and then it should be track ready, fingers crossed. But I will see you guys next week, and until then, peace out.